This is what God said, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, there thou shalt surely die. It was not long, however, before what God said is intersected and intercepted by what man says. This is what man says. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. There it is. There it is. God made a promise, but man was not satisfied with the promise. God says, I'll give. Man says, I'll take. So then, it looks like greed in the garden, selfishness in the garden, disobedience in the garden, sin in the garden, a fall from grace in the garden, an eviction occurred in the garden. The covenant is breached. The contract is broken. The tenants no longer have a relationship with the landlord. The tenants have lost their lease in the garden. They have no money to pay their rent, and the tenants have got to move. Strangely enough, there is nothing that can restore the broken relationship. There is nothing that can take one from John Milton's Paradise Lost and restore it to Paradise Regained. Somebody needs to listen to me. There is nothing that can take the broken and make it whole again. There is nothing that can take the fractured and make it complete. There is nothing that can bring healing and wholeness to man and maker. There is nothing that can bridge the guilt between fallen man and the justice of a righteous God. There is nothing that can reconcile the Creator with the creation. There is nothing that can cancel out the power of sin and pay the debt that man owes. There is nothing, I say, that can rescue the perishing, redeem the irredeemable, and atone for man's sin except for blood sacrifice. That is why Hebrews 9:22 says this: without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Now then, I do not mean to prolong the hour with a tedious analysis of the Hebraic system of sacrifice. But in order to understand the power of the blood, it would be wise to understand the Jewish mindset on this matter. What is at work in the Hebrew mind has to do with that sacrifice or that offering designed to eradicate guilt. The guilt offering was a special kind of offering made available for transgressions where restitution or other legal satisfaction could not be made. When the rights of God or men were violated, the wrong had to be made right. The broken law must be honored, and sin must be erased by means of a guilt offering. The offering that was required was always a lamb, guiltless and undefiled, pure in every way, that was given after the required satisfaction had been made. In other words, the sin offering of the lamb made atonement to God, that is, made things right all at one time. You do recall, of course, that Abraham took his only son Isaac to Mount Moriah. When he arrived there, however, Isaac asked a great question. Said, Isaac, I see the fire and I see the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Sin could only be cured on the strength of shed blood. It was only after the priest had offered atoning blood sacrifice that a sinner could be forgiven. Or the atoning blood of the sacrifice served to cover the sin until the day when the Messiah, the anointed one, the Lamb of God, would deal in finality with the sin of the world. But the Bible makes it clear that the satisfaction or the payment for human guilty sins was made by the death of a specified animal, because as they believed it, there was power in the blood. Now then, my brothers and my sisters, there are certain implications that are to be found and faced in this matter regarding the blood. If you are at all curious about what the blood does, if you really want to know how the blood does what it does, if you really want to know the value of the blood or the power of the blood, perhaps I ought to suggest at the outset that the blood is the source of my protection. Somebody say it's the source of my protection. Now, it will not take an extended excursion into Jewish history in order to discover that in response to the cries for freedom by an oppressed people, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Merely the presence of Moses in Pharaoh's court, along with his demands for freedom and that this enslaved people should be let go, it did not serve his cause well. But God told Moses to tell Pharaoh that because he would not hear and because his heart was hardened, the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even to the firstborn of the male servant that is behind the mill, and all of the firstborn of the beast. But that's not the end of the story. God said, Moses, tell the people to put blood on the doorpost. I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, but the plague will pass over you because you have blood on your doorpost. Somebody say blood on the doorpost. All I came to tell you tonight is that the blood is yet in the protection business. When death is all around you, you need to be covered with the blood. There is death in our streets and death in every neighborhood in town. You need to be covered by the blood. Guns are in the hands of those who should not have them and will use them and then claim that they were just standing their ground. Honey, you need to be covered by the blood. People will kill you tonight just because of what you wear and just because of the way you look. Honey, you need to be covered by the blood. What I'm saying is that there ought to be some indelible sign of your relationship with the God of your fathers. Don't step outside your door without shield or shelter. Don't go anywhere unless you are covered. Don't even try to walk home tonight unless you are covered. You need to be covered by the blood. Tell your neighbor, you need to be covered by the blood. Listen, you don't know that there have been times. Can I get a witness in here? There have been times when you have been covered by the blood and it was working for you and you didn't even know it. That's why you need to get your shout on, because an accident was waiting on you last week, but you walked away from the accident because you were covered by the blood. The doctor had bad news for you last week, and the only reason you're not in a hospital right now is because you're being covered by the blood. If you had your health tonight, it's not the Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medicare. They didn't have nothing to do with it. Your policy said, you've been covered by the blood. You didn't have any money last week, but somehow the Lord
believer, and you are covered by the blood. Oh yeah. Listen. Let me tell you how you put blood on your doorpost. I want to tell you how to put blood on your doorpost. Listen, even if you don't have a door and you don't have a post,